Hello, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here today. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm Shannon Farley, co-founder and executive director of Fast Forward. Fast Forward is the first and only organization dedicated to scaling tech nonprofits. Have you heard the term tech nonprofits before? Okay, right? Tech nonprofits, there it is, are organizations that have tech at the core of their impact model. We launched in 2014, back when tech nonprofit wasn't a word. So we coined the term, and we've been building an ecosystem of wonderful humans around it ever since. And some of you are in the room here today. I'm so grateful to have friends, old and new. Our belief is simple. Tech has the power to solve some of our biggest challenges, especially, and most importantly, when it's built by those closest to the issues. We've been working since 2014. We are sort of best known for our accelerator program. Accelerator programs in Silicon Valley, it's a pretty common structure, like Y Combinator or Techstars. In other parts of the world, we might call it a leadership development program. It's the same idea. We've had 120 organizations go through our accelerator program. They've gone on to impact 415 million lives, and importantly, raised over $1.4 billion in follow-on capital. So for 12 years, even our very first cohort, we had an AI-powered nonprofit in the cohort. For us, an AI-powered nonprofit means someone who's building AI not just for back office efficiency, but for their impact. 12 years ago, it wasn't called AI. You may remember it was called like machine learning and natural language processing. These are technologies that now sort of fit under the umbrella of AI. And I'm gonna talk about that, but first I wanna ground the conversation a bit in who we are and who we serve. Today, nonprofits are being asked to serve 21st century problems with 20th century tech. They don't have a chance. And when that happens, communities miss out on better help that gets to them faster, that's grounded in their values. We believe that closing this digital divide may be one of the highest leveraged opportunities for philanthropists in the next decade. AI is a little uncomfortable in a social impact conference, and that's okay. So I wanted to ground the room just for a moment. First, if you work for a nonprofit, would you raise your hand? Okay, I'm so happy you are here. If you work in philanthropy or philanthropic advising, will you raise your hand? All right, we're all here. It's great. We need to be in the room together to have this conversation. So first, we're going to do a quick pulse check, and then I'm going to invite you to be at each of your tables in community to share the hot goss about how you feel about AI and how you're using it. So first, AI usage on a scale of 1 to 5, and I'm going to ask you to hold up the numbers with your fingers. How many are you are using AI never, sometimes, or daily? Will you do it at once? One. Okay, we have some usage. All right, great. Now the next spicy question, how are your feelings about AI? Very scared, 1. Neutral, or very excited? Very scared is 1, very excited. Okay, that is the truth of the moment that we're in. These technologies can unlock all sorts of things, including some problematic things. So at your table, I want you to work with your colleagues and talk about a few questions. Some of the things you could talk about is, how is AI helping you in your work? How is AI holding you back? And what are you most excited about, and what are you most scared about? We'll have about 10 minutes to discuss with each other, and then we'll come back. Ready? Okay, let's do it. Turn around. Thank you for letting me walk around and eavesdrop. I'm a very nosy person, so eavesdropping is my favorite. And I'm happy to say, at each of these tables, there were some themes. People are using AI to help them in their home life, help them secure healthcare, help them make their homes more efficient. Folks are using it at work. Some are loving it, some are really hating it. And I heard several people concerned about data practices, particularly who owns our data, what they're doing with the data, and what the long tail of that impact will be over time. So I'm glad to say, I think you're in the right room. So nonprofits are already using AI for good. Just as the private sector AI usage is growing at exponential rates, we're also seeing it in the nonprofit sector. In February, the Nonprofit Times reported that 92% of nonprofits around the world are already using AI. They're mostly using it for search, for fundraising, improving emails. It's not the full capabilities of AI yet. Only 7% are using it for beneficiary-facing work. That's for now. We're starting to see it change. It's already changed in our portfolio at Fast Forward. 75% of the tech nonprofits we fund are using AI for beneficiary-facing work. And not too surprisingly, the thing that is getting in their way of scaling best practices is funding. There just aren't that many funders who feel trained or ready or comfortable with funding AI. At Fast Forward, as a funder, we use AI too. We do it for two reasons. The first is to get time back. How we did it is we took products that we already knew and loved within our organization stack, and we paid for enterprise features. To get that going, it took us writing an acceptable use policy, training our team on that policy, and then investing per employee. But it was pretty modest. It was about $500 per employee. These are the things that are open on my desktop every day. I think it's helpful to admit to people how you use AI. So I use Gemini in thought partnership. Like many of you, I context switch all day long, and I'm in meetings all day long. So I use Gemini to keep me honest about what the conversation should be and how I advance it. I'm a founder, so I'm always nervous about money. So I'm looking at my finances constantly and seeing where the money is moving. And then Granola is an open source note-taking software that I really love because I've trained it. So it knows my voice, it knows what were the key points of the meeting, and it can send my notes to our CRM system and our internal wiki. So I share what I'm learning with my team. The second, and I think more important reason that we use AI internally is to build muscle memory. If we want the social sector to be transformed with this very powerful technology, we must first be transformed, the funders. So it wasn't the easiest journey to get my whole team to work and use AI in their daily operations. That might seem strange because we work with tech nonprofits, but for all the reasons you just described, they're nervous about AI. And I would say particularly my youngest staff members. They're seeing their friends struggle to get jobs because AI has taken it. We work in Silicon Valley, so that's a very real thing that's already happening. So it took a little bit of work. How we did it is we went back to first principles. Humans learn through play. So we had turned on all the AI features. Nobody was really using them as much as we wanted. So for one quarter, we decided to tell the whole staff, you can use it any way that you want, but use it for personal reasons, and then report back in the Monday meeting what you did with it. And it was super fun. We heard all kinds of things folks were doing. Haikus and songs for grandparents' birthdays. Somebody took a picture of the contents of their refrigerator and told us what recipe the AI had suggested. It was a very fun opportunity to make fun of the boss. So this is a beautiful portrait that was created for me. The play unlocked innovation. Pretty soon, my team started recommending things we could build that would help the tech nonprofits we serve. And the first thing we built was a nonprofit AI policy builder. If you're going to use these tools, you should use them in a way that reflects the values of your organization. This is free and available on our website. It's a chatbot. You upload all of your organization's information. You upload your strategic plan, you upload your value statements, notes from board meetings, favorite phrases, and then you have a conversation with the AI, and it will help you write a policy that reflects your values, that is grounded in AI ethics and responsibility best practices. It's not pulling from the whole internet. We used a tool called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, to make sure they were pulling from the best resources first, And it does pull from the whole of the internet a little bit to make sure that the language and voice sounds like you. But thousands of nonprofits and funders have used this already. We did this almost 18 months ago, and recently we had to look at our policy again because AI is changing really quickly, and we wrote our policy before vibe coding. Will you raise your hand if you know what vibe coding is? Okay, so vibe coding is a new innovation in the AI world, where if you want to build something, you don't have to build all the software as you used to. You just prompt your way through it. I want an app to find the best restaurant in Oxford, and it should have these things, and I should be able to connect to my friends and send a message to them when I'm at the pub and they can't find me. It's amazing in one sense because it democratizes access to this technology. Anyone can build a tech product now. Also, a lot of the things about vibe coding, we don't always know how they work. It's not very clear. And some of the engineering and data ethics happen later. So you have to be really careful about how you vibe code. So we use this once again to refresh our policy to stay up to date. We believe deeply that you can build AI that is ethical and grounded in your values. So I wanted to invite one of our favorite founders up to tell you how they do it. Please join me in welcoming Manu Chopra. Manu, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. Will you please tell all these beautiful humans who you are and what is Karya?
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Manu. So happy to be here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Karya. Karya is the Sanskrit word for work that gives you dignity, work that gives you a sense of purpose. And that's what we do. We're thinking deeply about how do we use AI to bring accelerated, dignified earning and learning opportunities to low-income communities across the global south. We work now with over 150,000 people as of this morning. Check the dashboard, which is fun. It was 145,000 last week, so it was fun. We work with 150,000 people across 7 countries around the world, predominantly based in India. And we connect our communities to direct economic opportunities from the big AI labs. Mm-hmm. So we work with Google and Microsoft and Anthropic and OpenAI and DeepMind, and we bring economic opportunities from them in model building to these communities, right? If we really want to build inclusive AI, the only way to do that is to employ the communities you want to include. So we want to build AI that is not misogynistic. We want to build AI that's not homophobic. We want to build AI that speaks our values, that understands our languages and dialects. India has over 19,000 unique dialects. A language is just a dialect with an army. So you know what is 2 different dialects to you and me are 2 very different languages to the people who speak them. All across the global majority, languages are culture, right? And we're really worried that AI is going to wipe that out and replace it with an English-first monoculture. I have a dear friend who says speaking to ChatGPT feels like you're speaking to an American. And that is amazing. Americans are lovely.
Some of them, yeah.
But you want to make sure that AI models globally represent global values, that they understand global languages, they understand a context. If I ask in Kannada, the language spoken in my state, I want to eat some really delicious, healthy food, what should I eat? It tells me to eat broccoli and kiwi. Nothing's wrong with broccoli and kiwi, it's just not accessible to the most people in my state. If you ask in Bengali, I'm not feeling very well to ChatGPT, I want to get some medicine. It says take Tylenol, a medicine that doesn't exist in India. It's called paracetamol, right? Very basic things like this, but they limit the usefulness of AI in our context. And the best way to fix that, the best way to make sure the single most important technology in our lifetime works for the vast majority of the world is to involve the same people in building these models. And what we have been able to do is engage with these 150,000 people to build foundational data sets in now over 70 plus languages. We've done over 65 million paid jobs with our 150,000 people. We pay them 20x the minimum wage, the local minimum wage in our communities. And most excitingly, these meaningful cash injections lead to substantial income increase for the communities we work with. So we're both an income enhancing organization and an inclusive AI organization.
Because not everybody might know what a foundational model is. How does it actually work? How does your technology unlock this?
Great question. So we work with local governments across our countries, and I'll focus on in India. So we work with state rural livelihood missions to identify communities who are predominantly unemployed. 72% of our workers report no prior income before working with us. The rest report annual household incomes of anywhere from $120 to $500 a year. These are extremely low-income communities. One of the magics of India, and now across the global majority, is a lot of our communities have smartphones. Right? 84% of rural Indian households have a smartphone. So they download the Karya app on their Android phones. The app works without internet. It works in their languages. And all they start by doing is they start recording sentences in their mother tongue. So they're literally teaching the AI model how to speak their languages. And as they teach the model how to speak the languages, the model learns. They get paid at least $5 an hour, which in a country where the minimum wage recommendation is around 19 cents is a dignified wage. It's nearly 20x the minimum wage. But more importantly, when they record the data, because you're talking about data rights, our workers own the data sets that they create, right? So when we're able to resell the data sets, they get royalties from the reselling of those data sets. And I think that has been a very exciting way for us to make sure that data collection is done ethically. We don't do any work that hurts the mental well-being of our workers. We think deeply about what is work that is meaningful to our communities. And of course, by operating as a nonprofit, Fast Forward has this term called nonprofit judo, which is doing the things that only nonprofits can do. Last year, we gave away 81% of our total revenue in direct wages to our communities. And we're able to do that and pay them these dignified wages because we're a nonprofit and because these labs find value in the work we do. The governments become a massive payer for this work. So they start off by just reading out sentences in their mother tongue. So it seems really simple. And we slowly upskill them to do more and more and more complex work. The most complicated, most complex work on the platform is doing model evaluations. So we have used ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini in the last 3 months. And if you think the model responses are good, it's our 150,000 workers who are evaluating those responses in English and Indian languages.
So the tech companies like Microsoft and Google, even the Gates Foundation, are paying you because they want more languages ingested into their systems.
Absolutely.
And then you can pay the workers better than a living wage.
Exactly.
And they can make the models better for the rest of us.
Exactly.
And you're doing this in India, but you've also turned your platform into a platform that could be used by other organizations in other contexts.
Exactly.
Could you talk a little bit about how you do that?
Absolutely. So we call it platform as a service. We've now spent 9 years working on this. So spend a lot of time building this platform that is accessible to people who are not digitally savvy to begin with, but able to quickly do this very complex work. We started our past journey in Kenya with a grant from the Gates Foundation. We then moved to Ethiopia with the grant from the McGovern Foundation. We now work in South Africa. And in each country, we find a local partner that is leading the local ethical AI movement. And we share our platform, our network, and our insights, right? How do you build a foundational AI model that works for local communities at very cost-effective price? It roughly costs us, just to give this room, it costs us around $45,000 to build a foundational AI model, which is extremely affordable. The challenge of making sure AI works in each of the world's languages is technically trivial. It is fundamentally a will issue, right? So we work with our local communities, local partners in these countries across Africa, in Indonesia, and we've found amazing organizations that do this work, and we share everything, and then we disappear into the background.
One of the things that came up in the previous discussion was folks are nervous about how platform companies, both for-profit and nonprofits, use data. You said you identify ethical partners. What does that look like?
Great question. We have a contract with each of our partners that enforces 3 things. The first is every partner must pay their workers a living wage. They can choose to pay more, right? We in India pay 4x the living wage. But just the living wage is a great place to start. Number 2, no content moderation, no work that hurts the mental well-being. If people know the sector, content moderation is this horrible sector practice that a lot of for-profit data companies do. So nothing of that sort.
What is that for folks who may not know?
Think of it as like the digital version of manual scavenging, which is a lot of low-income communities across India and Africa are employed by some of these people to sanitize our virtual feeds to make sure that the feeds don't have content that is hurtful. But unfortunately, that means our communities have to then do this work, and that's fundamentally unethical, right? Like the price to move someone out of poverty cannot be their mental health. It's as basic as that. So that is something that we started the work in 2017. We just we're never going to do that. And that is a value that, as obviously we all share. This cannot be a surprise to any of us in this room. So in these different countries, we're able to find partners who have the same values. Our partner in South Africa, for example, Lilapa AI, which is at Skoll last year, run by Pelinomi, we're doing some fascinating partnerships with them where they're actually taking they're not just giving ownership of the data sets to the communities, they're also discussing a partnership with us where sales from their models, the revenues will go back to the communities that they're serving, right? And that is amazing to see, right? In Kenya, we work with Digital Green, and we've been able to help Farmer Chat. We built a model in Gikuyu, a language spoken in Kenya, that outperformed Gemini and GPT. And again, that cannot be that cannot be surprising to any of us, right? If I'm building a model for agriculture, who are the experts in agriculture but the farmers? And if I engage them to do this work and pay them what I believe are fair wages, I will make sure that the model works better for all of us. Yeah.
I think it's so important. We just asked this audience what excites them most and what makes you most nervous, and you can do it in 2 sentences. Because we have to move to the next exercise.
Ooh, good question. This question makes me nervous. So what excites me is AI represents a single best shot against information asymmetry. This is going to be a run-on sentence, which means that if we are able to use AI to give communities access to information that they need in their languages, I think we are looking at the end of information asymmetry, and that is fantastic. I think that really excites me. What worries me is information asymmetry is not the biggest problem. Power asymmetry is the biggest problem, right? So I may know what government scheme I qualify for, but if the government's not interested in giving me that scheme, I just know something that I don't have access to, right? So how do we make sure the core value of, if I think about how AI is built, right? So I have data collection, model building, fine-tuning, and evaluation. That's my force, so that's all that AI is. What we've been able to prove that low-income communities that we work with are not just passive beneficiaries of AI revolution. I find it slightly annoying when people in my country say India is the use case capital of AI in the world. And yes, that's true. We are.
We do have a lot of organizations based in India.
And that is amazing. But low-income communities aren't just passive beneficiaries of AI. They are phenomenal builders of the AI revolution. They're owners in the revolution. And what we've been able to prove is low-income communities across India, Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, all these countries can do the data collection, can do the model building, can do the fine-tuning, and can do the evaluation, and the models are better for it, and they are better for it. And I think that win-win is something that I'm excited about. Not being able to achieve that is something I'm nervous about. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Will you
Thank
join
you.
me in thanking Manu?
Thank you.
Yes. I wanted to start by showing an example of an amazing tech nonprofit that centers ethics and responsibility in every level of their work, from what they're building to who they work with and how they scale, because this is an active question for many organizations in our sector. We're going to do an exercise together. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's going to be okay. You game? All right, are we ready for this? So I have a couple of my colleagues here, Sophie Owens and Summer Kennedy. They will be walking around to support with this particular activity. What this session is and isn't. I'm going to give you a case study about a fictional nonprofit. It's fake, but I will say we get an application that looks like this about once a month. So it's pulled from things we're seeing all the time. They have been delivering, this organization, this fake organization, HarborMind, has been delivering mental health services in refugee camps all over the world for 15 years. Because of a financial cut from USAID, they're now considering a significant pivot. They can no longer afford to have human counselors in every camp. So they're interested if they could build an AI chatbot that would allow them to triage some of their work and push the most crisis, most risky cases to humans, but handle some of the administrative cases by the bot. They've already started, and the MVP is running with real users now. Okay, so this is a good organization. Imagine you've been funding them for years, you love the founder, you really like how they do the work, and they're just in a tough spot. They have to do something hard that they've never done before. So this isn't really about you evaluating the mission or evaluating the mission against your mission. This is about this organization in this moment, and that's a given. So this is not about should they do this, but what has to be true before they begin. Your job is to ask what it would take to do responsibly, where there are genuine gaps, where money and expertise could fill those gaps, and what they would need to do before going further. 4 truths worth naming before we get in there, and you'll get to read the full case study, so you have a minute with it. But the build was vibe coded. The build was vibe coded by a volunteer who is no longer with the organization. So I want you to consider, how would you navigate that? Yeah, this has happened to some people in the room, I see. Yeah, how do you navigate a product when the key technical staff is no longer with you? The data for this product was taken from 15 years of clinician notes. So they actually have really good data, but the data was collected before AI was a thing. The beneficiaries over 15 years did not know that the data would be used to train AI. So you gotta think about, is that an ethical use of those case notes? Even if it's anonymized, and it might be legal, is it ethical? There is some evidence from the MVP that 100 people in Turkey are liking the app. They got a 4.2 out of 5 rating. But what does that mean? Do they like the bot, or do they like the intervention? And finally, the money. This organization invested $370,000 to build the beta and to do a test pilot with 100 people. But that's just the startup costs. To build from vibe coded to a real product that's properly engineered has been priced out at $500,000, and they'll need their ongoing costs to keep it going. So is it worth it? You have the case studies on your table. I'm going to give you a minute, probably 3 minutes to read the case study, and then we'll walk you through the exercise. But before you begin, I want to remind you 2 things. You really love this team. You think they're smart and talented. Also, this is fun. Ready? You're going to get $500,000 that you have to spend by the end of the quarter. You're a funder to invest in this team or any other team, and you can do it any way that you want. You can split it any way that you want. You can invest in any part, in whatever funding practice makes the most sense to you. Does that make sense? You love them, and you have money you could give them. Okay? Okay, my friends, will you come back? Will you come back? We're going to talk to the whole group next, because I'm very curious. Do we have any volunteers from your table where you thought the plan was the weakest? Does anyone want to volunteer to share? Yes, ma'am. Will you say your name and your organization, please? And we have a microphone for you for the recording. So many instructions.
Hi, I'm Pooja Marwaha from CRY Child Rights in New India. We work with children's rights. So we had an interesting discussion here. There were some of us who were fundamentally against the issue, against the concept of using an AI for counseling. But I think the argument we were having was that, at least some of us were saying that but the alternative here is shutting down the work for people, right? So if you can have an alternative, then we should look at that. Then we were discussing how do we make, so sorry, I'm not going to use any tech words. I don't understand tech.
Thank you for being in the room.
Yeah, I'm a known Luddite in my, apparently my laptop also fights me. So, please add the iteration and all that. So I think the one thing that we kept thinking was how do you make the AI more robust? Because the data has been collected without an AI in mind. So one part is about ethics and permission, but there is one part even about the quality of that learning, right, for the AI. So the young man who knew the word said that it will learn through iteration, it will add. So as we speak, so we thought that if we put the permissions in place for the future, where people know that they're going to add to this AI for the benefit of others, most people will want to share their experiences because they want other people to heal, right? So if you put the permissions in place, this AI can become more iterative and better. Let me say the 2 things that I heard. One is that there's an ethical cost to doing nothing, and the data has got to get better. Yes.
So You had $500,000. $500,000. Did you spend any of it on supporting this team? How
Yes.
much?
Oh, we didn't think of that.
All of it? That's the answer I'm looking for. No.
Dear me, we don't know what it can buy. But
Well-
we need to buy technical skills.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Does another table want to go? Yes, ma'am. Oh, we'll go over here and then over here.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I know this is funny. I run a mental health organization, by the way. I run crisis text line, so this is funny. But we had a fabulous conversation and very quickly got to data ownership and ethics being the number one problem.
Yeah.
And because we have such brilliance at our table, which you witnessed earlier, we were able to come up with the solution being synthetic data sets, right? You really can't use people's vulnerable, private, most vulnerable mental health data without their permission to develop new models. And while for-profits do it all the time,
Yeah.
the reality is nonprofits are and should be held to a higher standard. And so, but there are solutions with doing things like synthetic data sets.
What is a synthetic data set?
Hi. The thought that we had, and we've done this in India, just having former patients and doctors simulate a conversation. So you're simulating, oh, I'm feeling really sick. The doctor's saying, what are your symptoms? How are you feeling? Because this is such vulnerable data, we have to there is no amount of anonymization. There'll be no names, but you can morph the voices, but this is such a specific community, right? Like if some of this information was to go out, there's such mental health stigma, as we all know, things can be extremely debilitating. So synthetic data is just data sets that are artificial, that simulate conversations. And what you can do today with AI models is, so if this is in English, all I need is 100 hours of synthetic data, 100 hours of simulated conversation, and I can use it to create like 500,000 hours of synthetic data, right? So the first 100 hours were human beings' voices, and the other, 499,900 hours are just synthetic. If it's a global South language, then I need 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 hours of real human beings having fake conversations, but that simulate real conversations, and then the rest can be synthetic.
Manu, that sounds expensive. You had $500,000. Did you decide to spend any of it?
I'm giving that to my team leader.
Yes, I think about 300,000 because his team's so efficient and we can hire some fabulous people.
Yeah. But what I'm hearing is it is possible to have better data that's ethically collected, but there is a cost center to it to make it work. Okay, great. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we had right over here, and then you can go next.
I'm Izzy Mohammed from the Skoll Center for Social Entrepreneurship here at the university.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Just some things that surfaced within this group. We actually never decided if we're going to spend the money or not. But I think we discussed how we think that the fact that the original coder wasn't there to begin with. So we don't know the governance or the rules that were used to build this foundational model. And so if you know anything about the AI world, for example, Anthropic is releasing a model that can potentially poke any holes that exist in code throughout the whole entire internet. So data is already vulnerable. And so we thought that I'm going to give my opinion on the 500 spend. I don't think we should spend it. I think if there is I don't think technology is always a solution. And so if there is a funding gap, that 500K can be pumped into filling that gap.
Okay, thank you. Up here in the front, and then we're coming back. Be ready.
I'd like to go back to what you said about the cost of doing nothing.
Yeah.
I spent about a month or so in a Syrian refugee camps by the borders with Turkey. Shortly after the war in Syria erupted, and I saw enormous amount of stress and anxiety among almost everybody in that camp. And the question is, how do you really apply? How do you deliver the care that these people need in a way that is cost efficient? We couldn't afford having a therapist and psychologist in every camp. So I think the challenging part about this issue here is the quality of the data that was generated under which the MVP was produced. And I think that's what I would, as a funder, and I do have a mental health foundation, I'd like to know more about that. And maybe one of the things that I would like to see is some sort of a test runs of which they've done some with some people, and how did the screen came about, and what were the outcome is, and how they evaluated it. So I think I'd like to see a little bit of a living standards that's created with a better understanding of how the data was initially generated.
Yeah.
You know, I would not withhold fundings, and I may go with a partial funding.
Okay, partial funding, I love it. All right, in the back. And then I'm coming to you and y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun to hear how all the ideas in the room kind of are very similar to the things we discussed. So to kind of add to the synthetic data set idea, as well as the how good is the data question, I think one of the things that we noticed as a weakness was that there was no evaluation built in, and that we'd really like to see clinicians be part of the evaluation process, and notice that, like, even if we have clinicians evaluating maybe the conversations that have occurred during the pilot, that, like, because it's AI powered, it's going to be intermediated by like a model and software that's going to evolve. And so even if the system's doing it really well right now, the next time we tweak the system, then it could have a dangerous outcome to the quality of the interactions that folks are having with it. And so just building on the synthetic data set idea, I think the idea that, like, we could actually have some kind of the equivalent of like test cases for software that, like, the system could be run through and sort of see through these running these synthetic interactions through it and seeing what the outcomes are each time we deploy a new version of the system. And so, you know, we felt like with broad brushstrokes, like what the Harbor Mines was asking for was, hey, we've run a pilot that's been really successful. Now we want to get ready to take it to scale and launch it. And that actually where they're at is we'd like to deploy the capital to have them do another pilot with better data and a system that's ready to be evaluated and ready to then be replicated, maybe geography by geography. So it's great, it's exciting, but it's not ready to take it to scale.
Okay, thank you. And this table here, Idris's table, okay. Any comments? Idris runs a tech nonprofit, so I'm going to volunteer. Oh, here we go, sorry.
Hi, we talked about a few things. A couple of things were we would encourage the organisation to look at who's already done this as a first point, because there are organisations like Mental Health Innovations in the UK that already have models and tools that perhaps can be adapted, that they can learn from, so that they're not reinventing the wheel. And then we also talked about how it's the issue around data, especially, I mean, with any community, but particularly vulnerable communities like this, is how they're thinking about capturing data, using data, particularly when this notion of consent is really tricky, when there's a position of power. How do people know how their data is going to be used or not, is really important as well. So it's not a question that should they or shouldn't they do it. It seems like the case is clear, but it has to be done responsibly, building on what other people are already doing in the field, and needs to be properly scoped.
Would you fund them to do that part of the work?
I think to start to invest some money, a little bit of money to help them scope it properly, to really map what it is that they need to do and how they need to do it is probably key, but making sure that before they even start that, they need to talk to others who have done this already.
Excellent, thank you. Our last table. Here it is.
Hi, I will try, but don't have a lot of voice today. I think we connect with the 2 tables ago. I think the biggest gap we saw is the clarity of what the impact they are aiming to. So what's the outcome, the impact, what's their theory of change? It's unclear if they reached 100 people in the pilot, what they are aiming now. So what this 500,000 means beyond the staffing time, that's a lot as well. We don't see indicators or clear, good indicators that was of the success of the previous initiative. I think you mentioned it, it also came up here that the rate of the app doesn't mean that the people that were address it actually like it or benefit from the product. We don't see learning in the proposal. So what did they learn? What were the gaps? What did not work and now it's working and they are addressing? We don't see the voices of the communities that were attended in the proposal as well, so it seemed a little bit top-down intervention. And our colleague noted that we are not sure that they even own the data that they are proposing because Anthropic is a volunteer. So I think we would fund them with time to improve the proposal and address those gaps and have more clear data to fund. I don't know if there is any other, okay.
Thank you all. I'm pleased to say you surfaced some of the things Fast Forward as a funder would be worried about. That do you have the right people shaping this? And did they have consent to do it? I think this is a meaningful problem we're seeing across the sector that we believe we're sitting on all of this data. We've collected surveys for years about our beneficiaries. But even if we had permission for that data, they didn't know. The beneficiaries didn't know that it would be trained against AI. AI didn't exist yet. So we have a gap in how we've collected it, how we communicate it, and how we can grow the data sets. Do you have the people to build this? For too long in our sector, tech has been stuck in overhead. Tech is thought of as IT instead of strategy. And that is much the fault of the funder as it is of the organizations. Nonprofits can only do what funders allow them to do with their budgets. In the world of AI, when people can vibe code a solution in a moment of crisis, tech is strategy. These were strategy conversations we're having, not technical conversations, and it has to be funded as such. And that means you have to fund pilots, growth, testing, and evaluation in the whole life cycle of the organization. Did you have a question? Oh. And what is missing from this proposal for us is what happens when something goes wrong. Because the only thing we know about tech is stuff goes wrong, right? There are hallucinations, there's bad advice. What's the plan? How do you strategize for what's down the road? Fast Forward recently wrote a white paper called the Philanthropic Reset. You'll see it on your tables, and it has a couple things in it. 3 suggestions. 1, you have to fund the tech. Tech is strategy in this age, and so we have to think about, as leaders of nonprofits and funders, how we support that holistically. The second piece, and this was surfaced in the conversation, is engineering radical cross-sector partnership. Even in this room, we have Crisis Text Line, a mental health funder, somebody who knows, someone in the UK who knows a lot about this. There are humans who could help you do this work. HarborMind doesn't have to do it alone, and that's actually something funders could fund. Making sure the partnerships. One of the things I love about Karya is this platform as a service model. Building whole cloth, what Karya has built, we don't need dozens of Karyas. We need Digital Green, a Crisis Text Line, or others to use Karya's services. We can use each other's services. Actually, in the nonprofit sector, we've done that for years. It just hasn't translated to tech nonprofits. The last piece, and I think this is really important, is that we have to look at the entire product life cycle. You have to test some things. I'm proud of this organization for trying something when the opposite of trying something was people being harmed, right? They did it in the best way they could, as responsible as they could, and then they asked for help. They asked for money to do it better. That is the earliest part of the life cycle. Getting synthetic data, building out your practices, hiring real people, we're getting into the middle long before you get to scale. There's opportunities for each of us as nonprofit partners, as funders, to play in it. This is a wild moment. Resources have been stripped away from every sector in every country in the world. There aren't enough humans to solve the problems, and the problems are just getting bigger. Tech has got to be part of the solution, but tech can only be part of the solution if we transform ourselves and how we operate. The organizations that are going to get this right in this dynamic moment are not those that are moving fastest. They're those who know exactly what they don't know, right? They know what questions they ask. They know their data practice isn't working. They know they don't have the people to build this, but they need people to ask. There's wonderful leaders, again, in this room, Jim Fruchterman and others, who help people build better tech to solve our biggest problems. We have to ask those in our community, because that's how we're going to surface these solutions. I'm curious, we have a few minutes. How did the exercise feel, knowing that it's near true? There are people doing this right now. Yeah? Yeah. Wait, the microphone.
What struck me was that for all of us in this room, we work with young people and we can talk about ethics and tech, but I was in a room last week where two 14-year-olds were talking about how their friends are now using ChatGPT as their counselor.
Yeah. 1 in 3 people around the world are using ChatGPT for mental health support already.
Yes, already.
Yeah.
So, and this is not trained, this is not taught, and we can debate the ethics of it, but that's what's already happening. So.
Yes, over here.
Following up, it also felt very real for me because I'm a tech founder, a startup founder, and I also work with a group that has very sensitive data management. So it really like brought me back to the space of, I've been there. I'm not necessarily have all the answers, as you were mentioning too, but I know what this real struggle is, and how can we make sure that everything that we're building becomes both ethical and sustainable at the same time.
Jim? Voluntelling is my favorite thing.
I thought this was great, Shannon. I think people surfaced almost all the issues that people building these solutions right now are facing. And most of the decision makers are not technical, and they're being sold by the tech industry not to worry about all the things that you guys are worried about. And you are right to worry about those things. People have done this badly. One helpline fired all their human counselors and put on a chatbot and did the exact wrong thing within a couple of days and had to be shut down. So people have gone completely in the wrong direction. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and as Dina and other people know, there's a lot of focus in this, and the people who are actually doing this are being more cautious than the people who are talking about doing it here. But maybe someday.
Actually, may I ask Dina? Because there are a lot of applications like this. Dina is the CEO of Crisis Text Line. Dina, would you like to describe Crisis Text Line and talk a little bit about what you think about HarborMind?
Yeah, people can think of us as a mental health emergency room. We're primarily in the US. We provide our tech and back end to MHI, was mentioned earlier, Mental Health Innovations in the UK, Kids Help Phone in Canada, and spun out in Ireland. And now we operate a second brand, Aquí Estoy, across all 20 Spanish-speaking countries. We're known for the intervention between everything from suicide, we deal with about a homicide a day, anxiety. Most of what we're dealing with is loneliness, relationship issues, depression and anxiety. But where a lot of our AI comes in and where we've leaned in the most is actually on the research side, is using natural language processing and AI to dig into those conversations to make us better and smarter from a quality standpoint and bring insights to the sector and to partners. But we have an institutional review board that is like the highest ethical oversight for human subject research. We have a team of clinicians who code that come to us from like trauma centers and suicide experts from Harvard. We've done a number of things to say, how can we be as absolutely responsible as possible? And it has affected some of the pace, like what you were saying, with which we've implemented. People say, oh, are you using AI for all of your operations? We're like, no, because we are trying to make sure that we're using it responsibly. And so in some places we're a little bit slower because we're trying to learn and partner. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
I think that helps. The pipeline from internal operations, internal transformation, figuring out how you can use it before you're beneficiary facing is really smart. Yes. Is there anybody else who wants to share how the exercise felt?
And I'm just going to add, I would love partners everywhere because this is about, like, we can't, Jim and I, right, like, we can't do any of this alone.
Yeah.
And the problem is so massive that, and especially as a global North organization, I would say very, very conscious of wanting to make sure we have global South partners as we all do this. This is our global responsibility to make sure that we do this well and together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Courtney had a question? Yeah.
I was just going to throw in that one thing I experienced, which feels familiar and not really about AI exactly, is sort of a short-term, long-term feeling of what you all said about, like, it's immoral not to do something, like what's the cost of not doing something, but also I was thinking about climate, which we haven't really talked about much in this room, the climate impacts of AI usage, and like maybe these refugees are coming from a climate crisis, and then we're using more of this technology that's exacerbating the climate crisis, and sort of how do we move through this world right now as ethical actors when there's just constant short-term, long-term sort of trade-offs to hold.
And it's a moving target, right? Many of the platform companies, because they time when they pull energy from the grid, are actually energy neutral. You were talking about water earlier at your table. It doesn't solve some of the other climate issues that bubble up. But that changes over time. So staying on top of it is really hard, particularly for an organization that's in the middle of a crisis and they lost all their funding. They're not tracking what's happening with AI products. But maybe that's a space that we as ecosystem builders who can share this information, you're seeing it in all these places. We have a role to play to help one another. Yes. Microphone, thank you.
I'm a physician, and having practiced for over 40 years and seeing the impact of mental health on my patients is enormous. It is our responsibility here in this room and everywhere where tech is actually being implemented to really make sure that we have something out there to help. There are 70% of the population of the world suffer from some mental health issue transsectionally at every single day, but may not be the same people, but there's so much need worldwide. And we all know that tech is being used. AI is being used to deal with mental health challenges. And the challenges that we have is that people do develop intimate relationship with their AI counselor. And I know people and patients of mine who tell me that I go to AI to answer those concerns that I have, and it will give me some guidance. So we need to have something built responsibly and effectively, and it has to be done, with great deal of implementation of confidentiality and consciousness to help guide millions of people.
Sure, yeah. I agree. I'm a tech optimist, and not because I think the tech is so whiz-bang, amazing, great, but I've been working in social justice issues for my whole career, and there were just never enough people to solve those issues as the issues grow. So I see it as a way to unlock the best of humanity, but in that moment, we're also dealing with some of the things that are not as great about humanity, and we have to navigate it and work with each other to figure out how to float this boat. Anyone else? Okay, I just want to say Fast Forward is here for some of these resources. We support tech nonprofits. We support, in our portfolio, there's 120, but we have services for thousands of nonprofits all over the world, resources, everything from how to start building a tech product as a nonprofit to communities of other founders. If you're a nonprofit in the room, I hope you come find us. We actually have a new report coming out, an AI for Humanity report, where we're looking at the sector. If you are a nonprofit, I would love it, love it, love it if you help us fill out the report so we can understand best how to serve the sector. We also have a Substack called AI for Humanity, where we're showcasing what's happening in AI. We have a lot of work on climate in that particular Substack, what we're seeing both on the product end and platform end. And then we work with philanthropists that are interested in helping transform their organization, both helping their staff figure out how to navigate when you get an application like HarborMind from an organization that you love. How do you help them through this moment? To what does funding responsible tech look like? It's all here. We hope you'll use it. Skoll has generously hosted us today, so on behalf of Skoll, if you could fill out their survey, they would really, really appreciate it. I'm so grateful I got to have this time with you. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you around.